Greetings, everyone. Hey, Coach Leanne is here with my beautiful sister and colleague, Coach Jen. So good to see you this morning, Jen.
Nice to see you too. Nice and bright where you are, I hope.
You know, it is. It is nice and bright here. I was able to get out this morning and play a little pickleball.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
Well, good.
it was beautiful. Yeah,
I have
Arizona
to play
has been nuts.
outside because it's winter here, so we have indoor courts. I haven't played pickleball outside yet.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we are playing outside. Arizona has been cold and windy and rainy. And today we had a beautiful morning.
Oh, wonderful.
And yeah, and Jen, I can't hear out of this ear. So
Mhm.
if I'm yelling, sisters, will you please let me know if I am yelling? My intent is not to yell at you. And if I miss something, I'm just being really vulnerable. I have no idea what's going on with my ear, but we're going to figure that out today. Coach Jen and I are so honored to be here. You
Mhm.
have joined us here on Leslie Vernick's public page. Hi, Janice. So faithful, Janice. Hi, Christina. So good to see
Mhm.
all of you here in this space. We are here to talk about a really important topic. Are you ready for it? Here it is. What is the difference between controlling someone and having good boundaries? Jen, this topic comes up a lot for
Mhm.
us in our coaching practice, like daily,
Oh,
like
all the
daily,
time.
all the time, all the time. And so, ladies, what we would love to hear from you is what do you think? We have an amazing community, live community here, don't we?
Yes, always.
We sure do. We would love to hear and see and bear witness to what it is that you think is the biggest differences between controlling someone and having good, healthy boundaries. There is a difference.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's a chasm between the two. So let us hear from you. What do you see as the difference? Hi, Tamara. Hi, Jen, Anita, Crystal. Look at all of us here in this space.
Oh, and there's Jamie from Canada. She's got my heart.
I love it. We are represented well. So, my friends, when you hear the word controlling,
Hmm.
what do you think? When you hear the word boundaries, what are you thinking about? How does that make you feel? Because I know controlling makes me feel a little bit uneasy, Jen. How about you?
Yeah, and kind of it taps into my need for safety.
Ooh, I love that you brought that up. The need for safety. You know, sometimes we do need to take the bull by the horns, and we need to make sure that we are stewarding our lives and the lives of our children if they are in harm's way at all. So there comes a time where controlling a situation is helpful if it helps you to get safer today. Perhaps physically, emotionally, spiritually, there's some things that you get to take control of. And that is taking responsibility for the life that God has given you.
Mhm.
So there's something powerful about self control as opposed to trying to control someone else.
Yes, yes, and manipulating that situation, being attached to the outcome as opposed to releasing it to God and how
Mm.
it's supposed to unfold. I think that's the real difference there too. Because you know what? If nothing else, it's exhausting. Being the puppet master
Oh
of all
my.
those things, it's exhausting. And it doesn't let us live our true authentic selves either, right? So so I want to hear some more about what this is. So Bree says, I hear controlling makes me feel like I can't feel or think for myself. It's a section of growth. A boundary is put in place for you, not them. Amen. Absolutely.
I
Which
love that. And I want to give a shout out to Christina.
Yeah.
Boundaries are about me being comfortable in my space. Controlling is about me being comfortable in their space.
Well,
Question mark. Some some good food for thought there. Christina, thank you for your courage. Please
yeah.
remember, my friends, whatever you type into the chat can be seen. This is a public live broadcast.
Mhm.
So we just so appreciate your level of engagement. Hi, Tracy. Welcome to the space.
Yeah.
So, Jen, When you think of boundaries, when you think of boundaries, I think of one thing that I think of is God is the creator of boundaries. And he starts with us as created beings, our skin.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of it, I'm like, wow, if I want to know what a boundary is all about, I can just look right here, right at my skin. And with my ear being kind of funky today,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I have boundaries around my ear, and then I've got this little hole in there. Something got in there. Something's irritating for me that penetrated my boundary and is causing some discomfort. My God given boundary is being a little bit violated, whether it's
Yep, it's been penetrated.
subject.
That's right.
Yeah. So what do you think? Oh, here, Jen Grace is saying boundaries equal what I will tolerate versus controlling. Sounds like you must do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our tolerations, our coping. Absolutely. What else, Jen?
Yeah, no, and I like that just reminded me too, the way Jen worded that is one's empowering, one's giving away our power. Right? Because if we put it all in, we may think we're powerful by telling someone else what to do, but we're in essence putting it all on them to do that thing we're asking them to do, and they're rendering ourselves powerless, right? Waiting for them to do something. And that's not how I want to do something for myself. So just like your ear, you want to go do something about that, right? So something, we may protect ourselves if we know we're prone to swimmer's ear, put drops in or put a plug in as we go swimming. But if it happens afterwards, well, then what can we do about it? We can go to the doctor, we can get our ears flushed, we can get, antibacterial drops or something and protect it and learn from that experience. So it's still very empowering for us to be able to do something like in your case with your ear. I see boundaries as a fence around my yard.
Yeah.
I want to protect my children. I want to protect my own heart. I want to protect my property. So I have built a fence. Does that mean I don't let people in? No, I have a gate. And I can let my
Mm,
neighbors in. I can let my family in. I might not let the neighbor's vicious dog in there.
absolutely.
Right? If someone's frisbee gets tossed over, I might go and pick it up and then toss it back. There's some things that are violating, and then there's some things like a vicious dog coming in to attack versus a frisbee, but it's there to protect. I put it there. I know what belongs inside that fence, and I know what belongs outside that fence, and what I'm allowed to go back and forth. And that's what
Jen,
boundaries are.
I love that so much. And at the beginning of our live, when you talked about the puppet master,
Mm,
so what you just described is the opposite of the puppet master. We're not turning control over to somebody else to play our strings.
yeah.
We are, by building or having the fence around our yard and having a gate and making the choices what we will allow in and what we will not allow in to our hearts, to our physical space, into our minds and our emotions. That's something that we can take responsibility for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go back to the flip side for a second. So let's talk more a little bit about controlling. So maybe there's been a time, Leanne, where you felt you've had an experience about having to control a situation. Talk to me about the good, the bad, and the ugly that you experienced. All three: good, bad, ugly. All three things about when you found yourself to be in a controlling situation.
Oh my goodness, so many. So I have to just say I'm a recovering control freak. So as a Christian woman, 34 years, as a mother of 34 years, as a former homeschool mom, I really controlled a lot of the atmosphere in my home in many ways. And in some of those ways, it was super healthy control. And then in others, it wasn't. So, Jen, I did a live the other day and I was talking about being more concerned about the outward appearances than at the condition of all of our hearts on the inside.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting my kids ready for a big event and get this done, running them around and not even really taking time to hear them and their hearts. And so when my agenda supersedes and is domineering over other people's agenda without listening to them, or looking at their hearts and what might be important to them, my control meter goes to the unhealthy side, because
Right.
then it's all about me, it's all about image, it's all about you name it, without seeing, hearing, or feeling that other person. So that's kind of the, kind of the ugly side of
Yeah.
what controlling can be for me. I have a blinder on. I can't see anybody else except for what I want.
Right. Yeah. No, I appreciate that so much. And then we get some backlash from that, maybe. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
So,
then there's when I'm controlling like that, the backlash that I would get from my kids is they're not fully going to want to engage with me, and then I've isolated them. They're outside, they're outside looking in
yeah.
instead of being in there with me, like in the backyard.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I love that you can identify that, and you've got such incredible awareness, which I think is also really key to knowing whether or not it's a controlling. We are truly controlling a situation in an unhealthy way versus having healthy boundaries, and we have to know who we are
Amen.
first and recognize who we are before we know what it is that we're there to protect.
Right?
We
If
have
we
to
don't know what's there to protect, then how do we even set a boundary? And how do we know if we're controlling or if we're setting healthy boundaries? Because boundaries are for us.
That's right. Absolutely. So we don't know what we're here to protect if we don't know who we are, what our heart stands for, what we believe in. I mean, people are going to have different tolerances for different things, right? Depending on your values and everything else. So some people might say, I would never stand for that in a million years. And someone else may be like, I'll open my gate to it. And there's no judgment there. It's their life, it's their choice. But that's where we really have to know who we are. And so getting to know who we are is getting right with God, understanding what it is that He is calling us to do, calling us to be, so that we can live up to that and protect anything that would get in the way of us serving Him in the way that He's called us to do.
Indeed. Jen, I love that you brought that up. So we have some choices to make. And, my friends, you are here on this live because this topic is resonating for you. You've made a choice to be here and spend time with us, and we want to honor that time. So if you have questions about boundaries, healthy boundaries or unhealthy boundaries, and about controlling behaviors, please feel free to type those into the chat, and we would love to be able to get to those. And so, Jen, you asked me some of the good, the bad, the ugly about me and boundaries and controlling. What would you like to share with those of us who are tuning in today about the good, the bad, and the ugly with you?
Yeah, thank you for that. I can think of something that seems relatively benign. Back in the day, before I found out about my husband's infidelity and sexual addiction, that I would find that if things weren't going the way I wanted them to at work, because I worked outside the home as a nurse in the government, if things weren't quite going the way they were at work, then the way I wanted them to, then I would come home and I found myself clamping down. And if you picture clamping down, and I did this with my hand, it feels like vice grips around me. I felt constricted, but that was my go-to. I wasn't feeling safe at work, so darn it, I better make my environment at home safe. And so I was a label maker freak. I still have my label maker, but I shifted how I use it. Okay. So this I went from unhealthy to healthy. But I would be like just controlling exactly where things were in the house or the schedule around the house or all of those things that, to your point, Leanne, alienated my family. I think, maybe they were even walking on eggshells because of how I just had to have everything just so, because I felt like if my environment was structured, I would feel structured, and that brought me a sense of safety. When once I realized and other things came out in my life, that wasn't really it. I was obviously picking up on something else that wasn't safe in my life, but that was my go-to. And for me to be that puppet master and controlling, I felt constricted. I felt mean. I felt like stuff was coming out of my mouth that was not like me, was not my godly self, was not my patient, loving mom self. That I know I was called to be, that I otherwise would feel so ashamed for by the time I went to bed that night with the way I responded to something. So I started to recognize that it was breaking my spirit. So what I thought was saving my safety or upholding my safety was really just eroding my character. And I couldn't stand that anymore. And so I had to do a deeper dive as to what was going on. So how could I still recognize who I wanted to be and be that and still maintain my sense of safety, which then came into healthy boundaries. So I had to do a deeper dive. It wasn't just about keeping the house neat and tidy. There had to be
Oh, so much more, and it's that external neat and tidy does not equate and is not the same as the internal parts of us neat and tidy. And so, doing that deeper dive, if what we're sharing with you today is resonating with you, we have an opportunity for you to do a deeper dive. We have very limited space still, don't we, Jen, in our Walking Core Strength group coaching program. It's going to be starting next week. And so if you have not saved your seat yet and you want to know more about taking responsibility for yourself, letting go of the need to control others, learning how to grow in your own self-control and taking responsibility for you, we invite you very warmly to join us in Walking in Core Strength. And so how do you find out more about that? I am going to put up a way that you can find out more about that right here. If you go to leslievernick.com/group coaching, you're going to find out more about our 3-month group coaching program called Walking in Core Strength. And we meet together for 90 minutes every other week, beginning next week. And we're going to be diving deep into being open, kind of committing to the truth. Okay, I'm a little bit of a control freak. Is anybody else a little bit of a control freak? We sometimes just need to take some ownership and say, yeah, I really like control. And Jen, I remember being really transparent. Usually that's who we are around here, isn't it?
We always are around here, probably to a fault.
Yeah, right. I remember thinking to myself, wow, if they would just think like me.
Yes.
About this particular topic, if they held the same values and beliefs as me, this would be a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done all the hard work. I've thought this through. Come on, just follow me and it'll be perfect. Instead, but that's when you did this earlier. You did this motion earlier, and that's like having our blinders on, where we're then not open to others' perspectives. That, and two heads are better than one, right? So we might think it's our way or the highway, and then we get into that control freak zone that then puts up those blinders that we can't see some other possible solutions to whatever problem it is that we're facing. And we're just cutting off all those other resources. So when we can become courageously committed to our truth, open to what other people have to say, and to the Holy Spirit, show up as our best selves and being responsible that way, and then being empathetic to the needs of others while not enabling other people at the same time. That's the essence. That's core right there. I just walked you right through it. That's exactly what we'll be doing in this 3-month coaching program. But that is the foundation of understanding how we need to show up with healthy boundaries.
Indeed. And Jen, I would just love to do a little bit for our folks about defining biblically what is a boundary. What is a boundary? So my friends, you've been with us for a long time. Many of you, maybe you're new here and we warmly welcome you. Maybe you've been following Leslie and our ministry for a long time. When you hear the word, if someone were to ask you, my friends, what is a boundary? How would you answer them? Jen talked about a fence around her yard. I talked about the skin that God has given me on my body. How would you define a boundary? How would you define a boundary? So I'll just throw out a couple of things. It can be a border. It can be physical, like a fence, or like skin, like Jen and I talked about, or it can be a moral boundary. And it can honor your values and your virtues, your character. Earth has boundaries. God designed this beautiful world with boundaries. How would you define a boundary? What do you think, Jen? What would you add?
Yeah, I love that. And I just think back to the times that Jesus had boundaries too, stuff that he wasn't going to tolerate, and he'd speak up about that. And And you know, like even when he decided, and it's kind of goes over into self-care, but when he decided to go off into the wilderness and he just needed that time to himself, he knew that that's what he needed to show up as his best self. So he had to, you know, not talk to other people. He had to go off and say, no, I need this time. And so other people may not have liked that because they had other jobs for him to do. But he knew that's what was necessary in order to protect himself and to show up as his best godly self. So, you know, I mean, the Bible is riddled with all kinds of examples of healthy boundaries and standing up for ourselves, even if other people don't necessarily agree. And that's something else I want to share too, is that people don't have to agree with your boundary. And they, in fact, for those that you might have the boundary with, definitely aren't going to like it, because now you're changing the dance. And they're used to getting their own way. And so it might be a new rule with children, and they're going to push and go, why, and throw their temper tantrum just to get you to back down. Or you might have a spouse that tells you that you're being controlling and how dare you, and you're not being a godly woman. They call you all kinds of names, and that it's because they want you to back down. They don't like the change that you're requiring of them, or that you're just showing up differently. And that's all that this is really about. Boundaries aren't about changing another person. If they happen to change as a result of your boundary, that's a bonus. That's a bonus. But when you show up differently as a new person, as a confident self, standing up for like your physical well-being, or Leanne said, like maybe a moral or something like that, I think that's when they start to stand up and take notice. And until they realize you mean business, they're going to try to push back and get you to back down.
Absolutely. People don't like, okay, let me rephrase that. Some people may not appreciate the fact that you need time alone, that you need a time out, that you need to excuse yourself from a situation, or that you have a no or a yes that is begging to be answered. Some may not appreciate that. And so what do we do then? What do we do then when we are starting to do our own personal work and we are starting to figure out what we can do, what we will do, and what we won't do? You know, when we have healthy boundaries, they're not walls to divide. This is what I often say. They're not walls to divide. They're a bridge to build. I believe, and I'm going to be really bold here, and I'm going to say that I believe wholeheartedly, Jen, and all of you out there, that every relationship, in order for it to thrive, needs a healthy boundary. In order for it to be nourished and to flourish. It is not to punish. Boundaries are not to punish.
No.
They're not to tell somebody else what to do. They're to help us steward ourselves well. So I'm going to pause there for just a second and just say, you know, God is the author, and he's the creator, and he's the designer of boundaries.
Absolutely. And I just love the fact that we're having this conversation, because I think one of the things that comes up too is when we're accused of controlling. So we may not even feel like we're controlling, but we're being accused of being controlling. And so as you are finally getting the strength and the confidence to speak up for something that you need, whether it's a physical need or a moral need or something like that in your relationship, you are teaching that person how you want to be treated. And if they come back at you with labels or judgment or something like, and you're just trying to control me, no, you're just making a very powerful request. And it's one that they don't have to abide by. They have free will. God gave them free will. They just have to know that if they don't abide by it, you're going to then go do X, Y, and Z to continue to take care of yourself. So you might have taken one stance, and if they don't want to honor that, that's their prerogative. But that also means then you choose to go off and do something else to even further strengthen that boundary. So they have to know that there's consequences to their decisions, but that you're not telling them what to do. They may try to threaten that with you to get you to back down because you don't want to be a controlling person, but you're not being controlling. You're making a powerful request.
Right. And, you know, Jen, so I'm going to just share practically one of the boundaries that I have given myself, because I know myself and I want to show up as my best self. And I can show up as my best self really great until I don't.
Yes.
If I do a pretty good job until I don't.
Mhm.
And so I know for me, getting to know myself, becoming a student of myself, I know that I don't have my best conversations late at night. I
Mhm.
just don't. I'm tired. We work all day, we coach all day.
Yeah,
We're in the trenches with women all day long.
that's right.
And by 8 o'clock at night, I'm kind of done. I'm kind of ready to wrap up my night most nights. Sometimes
Mhm.
I'm coaching after that, but I've made a commitment to myself that I know that I don't have the best conversations. I'm not as in control of my emotions. I'm not as in control of my thoughts or even my behavior after 8 p.m. at night. So I have made a decision that I'm not going to bring up very important or potentially high emotion topics after 8 p.m. at night. If they get brought up to me, I'm going to ask for it to be tabled until the next day
Right.
or until an appropriate time. And if I bring it up, which I have done, I violated my own boundary before, I commit that I'm going to finish the conversation in the most dignified way that I can. And then I'm going to try and table it for later because I fail at setting some of my own or keeping and holding some of my own boundaries. And so
Mhm.
this is part of me not letting my feelings decide. 8 o'clock at night, can I feel like bringing up something hard? You bet. But do I know that I cannot be my best self? Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's something that a boundary that I have, whether it be with my husband, my kids, my grandkids, my family members, colleagues, coworkers, friends.
Mhm.
I've got to be in the right space and have the capacity to have those kind of conversations. And if not, and that's for everybody's protection, not just mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we violate our own boundaries, that becomes to me sort of a form of self betrayal. And so now, not only am I dealing with whatever the difficult nature of, say, that conversation was or the situation was, but now I'm dealing with the self betrayal. And I call that an emotional hangover. So now I'm
Mhm.
dealing with a double whammy. I betrayed myself and I'm, regretting that and all the feelings that come with that, plus whatever the situation was. So, it just bodes well for me. And like you, Leanne, I've learned the hard way. I don't want those emotional hangovers. They're too draining. And I have too much reflection I have to do and learning from it. So if I would just stick to my own boundary and have that self-control, I'm not only then honoring myself, but in essence, by me not like you, maybe not having that conversation after 8 o'clock at night, I'm saving that other person too from what might not be my best self. Right.
Right.
So I know for me, it's, teaching others not to disturb me during my devotion time because it could be seen as very quiet, or maybe it looks like I'm just looking at my phone and they don't know what's on my phone, but it's my devotions and it's everything that I have online. And I'm asked for things in the morning, or I'm asked to come and have coffee, or let's go for a walk. Let's take the dog out. And it's like, and all like loving things. But I finally had to say, you know what? I'm going to get up and leave the room. Well, why are you leaving the room? And all this are like, as if I was being rude. And it kind of hurts my people pleasing heart for a minute.
Right.
It really does. So now I've got this tug of war going. Do I give up on my devotion time to please this other person? Or do I have to put in a hard no and upset that other person, but then I get my right time with God? But I don't know about any of you, but I have established such a routine that my day is not the same if I don't devote that time to the Lord. That's just me. But it sets the stage for me. And so I've had to learn to really speak a hard no to some of my loved ones sometimes and just say, it's not me being offensive. If you just give me 5 more minutes, I can do that thing with you. But right now I need this quiet time. And if you can't give it to me in this space, I'm going to get up and leave the room. I don't ask them to leave and I don't get snarky and I don't whatever. I just wave and I'm busy and I get up and I leave. And those can be struggling times because I want to give to my loved one, but I also need to give to me and what it is that I'm giving to the Lord during that precious time. So I understand too, if anyone's struggling out there, and that those are just I hate that word, but those are somewhat simple explanations to, or simple situations where boundaries might come in play. I know there's much more difficult circumstances out there, but if even under those simple circumstances, we are having trouble sometimes honoring our own boundaries. Wow. You can imagine how hard it must be sometimes under more difficult situations. So I appreciate if anyone out there has a hard time stepping up, having the courage to follow through. And sometimes it's just getting to know who we are and what we have a right to is the first step, even if you don't take action yet. So even just by showing up and being a part of this conversation today is the next right step towards forming healthy boundaries and getting out of that sense of control. So good for you for being here.
Indeed, Jen. Thank you so much for that beautiful analogy. And, when you spoke about earlier about feeling safe, me too, right? We've got to protect the things that are most important to us. And your devotions are very important to you. Mm-hmm. Me too. And we know that we're not going to be our best self with other people if we don't take care of ourselves. And so having a boundary around your time, we are all given the same 24/7.
Yeah,
we are. What we do with that. And so time is a wonderful way to start practicing boundaries that are maybe a little easier to put into place. So we both talked about protecting our time, whether it be in the morning, in the evening, so that we're able to be our best selves with others. Besides time boundaries, what other boundaries would you like to learn to set and be healthy in so you're not putting out controlling words to other people? Like, you have to, you must. Those types of words are putting boundaries on somebody else. You have to talk nice to me in order for me to hear you. No, they don't. No, they don't have to talk nice to you. Actually, let me rephrase that. That one almost is. You have to talk nice to, you can't ever tell someone they have to do something. Yeah. You can invite them into the conversation. And so a hard conversation might sound something like this. I am more than willing to have a conversation with you around this topic. What I am not willing to do is to yell at each other and be accusatory and blame. When you are ready, and when I am ready to set aside the blame game and to lean in with curiosity and have a mature conversation, then I'm all in. Yeah. Until that point, I'm going to need a timeout.
Yeah, exactly. And those are still those choices that we mentioned earlier, right? So you want to enter into a conversation. If they choose to use vulgar, blaming words, whatever, then that also means they choose not to get to talk to me because I will not tolerate being spoken to in a rude, yelling manner. Right. I will have this conversation, but not like that. So I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to leave the room. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to drive in my car, whatever. I am excusing myself from this conversation when you cannot speak nicely to me. That's a boundary. Not a punishment. It's something that's in my control. They have to sit with that, but I'm not going to tolerate being yelled at.
Right. And we know that, that is, that's when your it's over the top.
Yeah.
If you want to have a conversation with me, great. But if you're going to yell at me or shame me or blame me, then I'm not okay with that. And this is where I think controlling can be making a to-do list. Boundaries are making a to-be list.
Yeah.
Who will I be in this relationship? And what would that look like? What would that look like in getting to know ourselves? And it's really bringing dignity into the relationship because you're teaching somebody else how to treat you.
Yes.
And oftentimes, I don't know about you, Jen, but I'm a recovering people pleaser as well. And I really can fall into that space of wanting it to be okay for everyone. And something that I realized many, many years ago is that I was kind of boundaryless. I didn't have a fence around my yard. I just pretty much let people come and go as they please. And, I've talked to women all over the globe. And when I mentioned this phrase, I will love for crumbs, they say, oh my gosh, no matter how you treat me is okay because I am not worthy. And we're here to tell you, my friends, you are worthy of dignity. Yeah. Maybe somebody needs to hear that in this space. I know I do. Sometimes I really do.
Yeah. We are worthy of boundaries, and it is a very loving thing to do. to have. We've always heard that, the idea that kids love rules, that they thrive with rules, and they may hate them, but they thrive. And it's not unlike having boundaries with all the people in our lives, because if we let them just run amok all over us, then that means potentially they're doing it with everybody else in their lives, or they think they can do it with everyone else in their lives. And we're not doing them any favors by letting them think that that's okay. It's a very loving thing to not only do for ourselves and know that we have the right to that, or you want to have dignity in this relationship, but I think we're showing them that we love them by trying to teach them ways to show up in a loving, caring, respectful manner. And so as much as boundaries may feel like punishment, or this is new to somebody that has typically been a people pleaser and would love for crumbs, it's okay to say, no, I still love you, but I'm going to love you from over here. You figure that out over there, and I'm just going to love from over here until you figure that out. Doesn't mean you have to be connected. Doesn't mean you have to do all those things that you give away the farm with your love. You can still love somebody from over here while they figure something out. So it's letting them free to go off and do those things while protecting yourself is just a combination of love all over the place. It just may not feel like it to that person, and they're going to make you feel that way if they come at you with judgment, labels. You're controlling me. How could you be so mean? Why can't you let me do this? It's because they're not used to it, and they're asking you to cave on your boundaries. They're asking you to let them run amok.
Right. And, I'm a grandma of 7. And so another boundary that I have is that in the mornings, if I have my grandkids overnight, in the mornings, they want to play games. They want to do all kinds of things with Grammy, right? Mm-hmm. I have my quiet time and my coffee before I play games in the morning. And that, it's really kind of fun. It's become somewhat of a game with them because they'll come look in my cup. How many things do you have left, Grandma? They know now. Are you done in your Jesus chair, Grandma? And so when we can invite them to learn more about us. And it's a gift that we're giving. Boundaries are a gift. It is going to help others see, hear, and know you. Mm-hmm. And if we don't see, hear, and know ourselves, we cannot teach others to see, hear, and know us. For who we really are, Jen, not for who they want us to be or their idea of us. Yeah. Right? I'm a full-on play with me grandma. And until I'm not. And so knowing where I end and where you begin is another part of healthy boundary setting. And so there can be soft boundaries. I'm pretty soft with my I'm not going to have like this hard, harsh with them. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to communicate it. And if they step in and try to violate that boundary, I'm going to be a little bit playful. And if they keep pushing it, then I have an opportunity to say, hey, time out. Let's try this again. What did you not hear Grammy say? Let me see those eyes. That may not work with your spouse. They may not like that. You don't want to patronize them.
No.
Okay, so let's be real. We've got to make it age appropriate. And we have to make it appropriate for the relationship. And so that's something to really know about yourself. So I live in a community here, Jen, where we don't have a lot of fences. We don't have a lot of fences here. And people walk their dogs all over the place. And so it's really fun. Some people in their yards have little signs and they have like a bench. Like my neighbor down the street, she has a bench in her yard that says, this is your resting station, not your pet's pooping station.
Yeah.
Boundary. You may rest here, but please clean up after your animal. Right? So there is a way to communicate in such a way that does not alienate people, but that invites them into a right relationship, an honoring relationship with you. So what else would you add to that, my friend?
No, I love that. I think it's the whole idea of inviting them in, getting them to know us better, and providing a sense of consistency. Because as you've mentioned a couple of times, I'm that way until I'm not. Well, it could be considered unfair to the other person. They don't know when our switch is going to finally be flicked. So if we've constantly, maybe it's bugged us, but we've let them get away with it. And then finally we snap. That's on us because we let it build. We weren't listening to ourselves. We weren't putting in boundaries sooner. We weren't protecting our own needs for self-care. So it didn't get to that blow up point. And so by having boundaries on ourselves and with others, it provides a sense of consistency, which I think most people find to be safe. They know where they stand with us. So yes, the kids are going to be like, are you done yet, Grammy? But they recognize that there's a time and place. They're just asking if you're done yet, right? But they recognize that there's something there. Right? They're not just climbing all over you and doing whatever and constantly badgering you. And if they were, then that's when you would escalate it a little more to say, are you hearing me? Right? But there's some consistency there. And I think that's the age appropriateness of it. We just want to be consistent, because the other thing too, we have to be careful of is, I know boundaries, especially with spouses or people in maybe older type of relationships, that we want to give that consistent message, because if we aren't consistent, they may hear that as, oh, she doesn't mean what she says.
Right.
And we make mistakes, and I hear you. And don't let that be a way that, oh, you give up everything. Start again. Please keep trying. But just know that when we talk a good talk, and I'm going to leave you if you don't do this and whatever, you have to mean what you say and be able to back it up. Because if you don't, the next time they do X, then they're going to think, see, she doesn't really mean what she says. And then they're going to run all over you again. So it does take a lot of courage. It does take a lot of thinking through to escalate some of these boundaries and what happens when they're violated. So you have to be ready. You have to be in a good support network, I think, sometimes, to be held accountable for those things, to really think them through. Some women I know that I coach a lot of times are women that have, had porn or sex addiction and infidelity in their relationships. And they may not be ready to end the entire marriage just yet, but they know that they've been deeply hurt and violated with their vows. So they may choose to go sleep in a different room. Or they may choose to have what we call a healing separation. That's not intended as a trial practice divorce. It really is, I just need to find out who I am in this, and I need to live over here while you do your thing and I do mine. Or, so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. There can be a continuum of what we need and what we execute on, but we just have to mean what we say and do it when we say it, which I think is another really important lesson, both for ourselves and for the other person, so that they know we mean business.
Indeed, Jen. And I often say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean.
Yes, exactly.
Say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. And the other thing I often remind myself over and over, clear is kind. So we can be really wishy-washy. We can vacillate back and forth, and then nobody knows what it is that we stand for. And so another thing that when I talk about boundaries is I will say, be known for what you are for. And so it keeps it more in that anabolic range. All right. So be known more for what you are for. I am for quality conversation. I am for relationship building. Instead of saying, I'm not for blaming and shaming. I'm not for, whatever, but be known for what you are for. So that goes into your big circle work. That goes into taking ownership and being open to who God created you to be, and being responsible for yourself and being respectful to others. And that's the R step of core. So if this is resonating with you and you want to walk in and learn how to set healthy boundaries and have quality relationships and conversations, we invite you to go to leslievernick.com/group coaching. There's a video there for you to watch. There's an explanation of our group coaching program, Walking in Core Strength, that's going to be starting very soon. And so I know, Jen, for me, my family of origin was not really good on teaching me to be able to ask for what I need or want, and to even identify it. I kind of just fell in to whatever they wanted me to be. I kind of became a chameleon. And so maybe learning to set healthy boundaries and letting go of the need to control. Because I think sometimes when we don't have healthy boundaries, we grasp for control. We're trying to do something to fix or make things better in some way, and then we can do it. Our default can often be unhealthy, and controlling can be birthed out of fear.
Mhm.
Boundaries can be birthed out of love. And so for us to be able to pause for just a minute and really take a good look at ourselves and know, what is the driver here?
Mhm.
Is it my fear-based emotions, or it is my love-based values that is propelling me forward into navigating relationships in such a way where honor and dignity is part of them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we do a deeper dive and explore that over the course of 6 times together over 3 months in our upcoming group coaching that starts next week. So as Leanne said, we opened up more classes because we were full. So
Okay.
we do have some spaces left towards the end of the week, I think, classes. So we encourage you to look more into it if this is really kind of speaking to you and having that conviction, because boundaries itself could be a 3-month course, I think, sometimes.
Good.
And doing the deep dive. But because of that, Leanne, why don't we turn to some questions in the few minutes that we have left? Because there are quite a few here.
Beautiful. And if you've got the document up, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I do. So I'll just start at the top here because there's quite a few. So we'll see how many we can get through. So are boundaries more about controlling the way you respond to a situation than controlling the situation?
Mhm.
I would say yes.
Yep.
It's how you're handling it. That's perfect. So if we still have to use that control word, it's how I'm handling me, how it's handling how I want to show up and how I want to be treated. It's not trying to control them or the outcome, because we don't have that much power. We really don't. We just have power to do what we say we're going to do. So one quick example is, I know a lot of, again, in the world that I coach a lot in, a lot of women will say, oh, I want him to sleep in a different room.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's great. You can make that powerful request, but you cannot make him go sleep in a different room unless you're stronger than me. You can't physically pick him up and move him into another room. So if he refuses, what are you going to do? Oh, well, I don't know. And it's like, well, then let's back up. What do you really need here? Well, I need space from him because I don't feel safe right now. Okay, so it's the boundary isn't, I need you to sleep in another room. That's just what you need to help feel safe. So what else can you do to feel safe? Well, I can go sleep in the spare room. Great, that's within your control. You can pick up your stuff and take your nightgown and your pillow and go into the other room. That's totally, so you can't control him or that situation, but you can control you and how you respond to it. So that's a really good example of that. So another one. Okay, so I think the next question is pretty much the same, so I'll skip that one. Paint a word picture for me about healthy boundaries when co-parenting during divorce.
Mm. Well, I know a lot of the women that I have coached, Jen, uses different apps for their conversation. So, and some of the women that I have coached said, I will not have a oral conversation with you, but we can keep everything like in the family maintenance apps that you can have,
Yeah.
or everything over text or email. So there is documentation of the parenting plan, of whether or not the parenting plan is being followed through. So that is one example. What else would you add, Jen?
Oh, I've had women in situations where say the other parent is purposely not being on time,
Yep.
not being punctual, just to be difficult or whatever. So they've had other family members go and meet for pickup times or exchange times so that they're a little more accountable for showing up on time. I've had women make exchanges in police station parking lots for safety reasons, or to just say, no, I mean business. And if you're not going to comply, then the police are right here.
That's right.
So, and that might be an escalation. You might not start there, but if they keep violating, and you still have to exchange your kids, it might get to the point where, well, we're going to do it at the police station. Or the next one could be, I'm taking this back to my lawyer because you're breaching of contract. So it can still be the same, be on time, But if they keep violating it, what you need to do to keep protecting that has to escalate. And so there's all kinds of different examples, but I love the app. It's a lot of times it's about communication. And I've had in some co-parenting situations that are, more communicative, I've had people go to counselors as a family or as a couple just for co-parenting, and they agree on the core values that they want to raise their children in. And so they both agree to honor that and have a dialogue that if my way of going and honoring that value might not look the same as yours, but if we can identify that, oh no, but I'm still valuing that little Johnny doesn't give up on skating just because he had a bad day.
That's right.
You might have other ways to go, well, we'll put him in this class instead when he's not so cranky and tired and whatever. Like, so he's still honoring not giving up on something, but it might happen in different ways. So when they get that foundation of what the family values are and both come to agreement, that can be a way of co-parenting and honoring different boundaries and speaking up to what's right, for your kids. So those are just a few examples. I think every situation is quite different.
They are. And I believe one of the family apps is My Family Wizard, is one of them. I can't remember, if you've got association or familiarity with a parenting app that maybe your attorney or your mediator or the domestic violence shelter, whatever, has given you, type it into the chat. Let's share a resource. Let's share a resource about what could be possible. And the neat thing about having that documentation is it's right there in black and white. It's indisputable. And so by keeping your conversation in communication with data, that is a win-win situation for everyone. It clears away that confusion. Again, it can be very kind way to communicate. And depending on how it's presented, it can be welcomed if there's a confusing pattern going along.
Yeah. Let's jump to the next question because of what you just said. This is perfect. It's how we communicate it sometimes too. So I think this is a nice segue. So this next question says, how does one express a problem? Like, say, I need you to not discuss this subject. Instead, when you say this topic makes me very irritated, does it matter how one presents the problem?
I've got to say, we can't control how other people take how we present a problem. One thing that we can do is to be responsible, to have the conversations that matter most with a little bit of preparation. What I have found in coaching women and even in my own life, that there are difficult conversations that we have an opportunity to invite others into or that we've been invited into on a regular basis. We want to prepare. Jen, you and I have talked about this when we had Lisa Turkhurst at our conference, right? She encouraged us all, prepare in times of strength for times of stress and struggle later. Mm-hmm. And so by knowing what is most important to you and being able to communicate that in a way that is honoring to yourself, the situation, and respectful to the other person is a gift that you can give the relationship, no matter how difficult it is. Other people may not receive it, but you're going to sleep better at night, knowing that you're prayed up, that you've taken some time to pause and practice. And even, Jen, dare I say, plan for the best time to have that conversation. Sure. Just like with me, 9:00 at night is not my best time to have a conversation about anything important.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, we have that rule in our family. Our kids just know that texting is not to drop a bomb on us like, hey, I blew through all my university savings. I need $5,000 tomorrow. Like, no, we have conversations about that stuff. You don't do it through text. What we use text for is, hey, can I come over later? Hey, what's for supper? Hey, whatever. What's the plan for the weekend? Like just something lighter, something not so heavy, right? And that's just a boundary we have in this family, because anything big and heavy, whatever that may be, we're going to talk about because too much can get lost in translation, right? Yeah. So it's honoring each other and respecting those bigger types of topics. So I agree with you with all those things, that taking time, being responsible for ourselves. If we do know that other person well enough to know what's going to be more conducive to them, then why wouldn't we want to do that? Because it's helping us get our message across, right? So if we know that talking to them before they've had their morning coffee probably isn't going to be a good idea, then wait.
Then just wait.
Like, just
And
wait.
that's the self-control piece. We
Yeah.
get to exercise self-control. We want others to do the same.
Yeah.
And so part of that onus is on us to grant
Yeah.
that same gift to others.
That's right. I think so. It can be the words we use. It can be the you make me blah, blah, blah. Well, watch the you statements. It's use the more I feel statements, that kind of thing, so that you're showing that you're taking responsibility for how you're showing up when you're making that powerful request of them. So,
and it sounds a lot better. Yeah, it sounds a lot better to say, I will not be in a conversation where there's shouting involved, instead of you can't shout at me.
Yeah. Because yes, they can.
Yes, they can shout at you, whether it be
Yeah.
your kids, your spouse, your ex, your parents. If they choose to, they can.
Yeah.
And then, this is where, Jen, I love, as we work with women, we can encourage them to make a list of their choices. So when you're faced with wondering whether or not what kind of boundary you could set, a healthy boundary, maybe write down, what choices do you have?
Mhm.
What choices do you have in this circumstance? So as you're co-parenting, that's one thing that you can do, is to look at what you can do and write those down, and then formulate some healthy boundaries for yourself around that.
Yeah. Because boundaries are meant to be firm but flexible.
That's right.
And they can be adjusted over time, because maybe they've shown some growth, maybe they've gained some trust, so you can give them a little more wiggle room. That what used to make you feel safe because it had to be this way, now you feel safer, so it can be a little more like this over here. So firm but flexible, having different ways, different options for yourself to uphold that boundary. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this, lots of ways to communicate it. And, not all boundaries need to be communicated. You don't have to go into some long-winded explanation that if they start yelling at you and calling you names and all these blasphemous things, you might just get up and walk out of the room. You don't have to go, and by the way, I decided that when you speak to me that way, I'm going to blah, blah. No, maybe you just get out of Dodge, just leave. Especially when safety's at stake. But I mean, you don't always have to communicate things in advance to them, but you have to communicate them to yourself.
Right. Oh, Jen, I love that you shared that. Know what you will do and what you won't do. And there are times that are going to be appropriate to share it. And sometimes just getting up and leaving the space.
Doing it.
Sometimes your actions are much louder than any word you could say, because oftentimes in the heat of a situation, people's ears are closed. They're not going to hear you. But if you're not physically in the room, that's going to speak volumes.
Yeah. So still lots of questions here. So, and we've only got a couple minutes left. So here's one that I think might be good for people to understand the difference. How is a consequence different from punishment? I struggle with this.
So off the top of my head, a consequence is on me. A punishment would be on another person. So for me, a consequence. So I had shared at the beginning of this live that I won't have these really deep conversations after 8 at night. But if I feel the need to say something after 8 o'clock at night, then the consequence that I have on myself is that I will finish it to the best of my ability. I will bring it to a place of closure for the moment, and then I will table it for later. A punishment could look like, I'm going to turn it over to you for that, Jen.
Yeah, a punishment is more like you're trying to impact the outcome. Right. And that's more leaning towards the controlling side of the situation. So it's disempowering to you because you're imposing some sort of punishment, or maybe those words are interchangeable. It's how you're using it is the difference. So if you say to someone, I'm going to not do your laundry for the next 6 weeks, the next time you raise your voice at me, that can be seen as a punishment. But at the same time, it could be, you know what, that they keep raising their voice to me. They keep disrespecting me. I'm not going to do their laundry, but not to punish them. I'm choosing not to give them a relational comfort in this marriage. And I'm going to use that time that I would normally spend on laundry to devote it to me and my self-worth. I don't deserve to be yelled at. So I'm going to take that time that I might normally spend doing their laundry, and I'm going to do it for me. That becomes more of their own consequence. If they choose to yell at me, that means they choose to not have their laundry done by me. But the difference is I'm not doing it to you, like finger in your face, and I'm going to make you suffer because of this. It's no, I'm actually going to stop doing a relational comfort for you so I can use that time to go over here and care for myself. And I hope that separates out the difference, because I do know that it can feel like a punishment. And if you are doing it as a punishment, only you know in your heart if it's intended as a punishment. If it is, it's not a healthy boundary. It's inevitably, it's going to fail. And you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to get lots of pushback. I know we're tempted, but it's not going to work that way. I've had women that have said that if he doesn't whatever, then he's going to have to rub my feet all night. And it's like, really? That have to? And do you want rubbing your feet to be a punishment? Do you not want that to be a loving thing? Like, be careful how you talk about this stuff, right?
Our words matter, Jen.
Yeah.
They matter a lot.
It shows that you have to be punished into rubbing my feet and doing a loving, intimate thing. Just, so be careful how you talk about these things, but only you know in your heart where it's coming from, whether it's intended to punish that person and teach them a lesson versus, hey, I'm going to stop giving you this relational comfort of spending time with me or cooking your meals or going to church in the same car with you or sitting with you at church or anything like that. And I'm going to spend time with me over here so I'm not distracted. Done. So I hope that helps. I know, again, this is a big conversation, and the people pleasing and the self-control and is it punishment and is it controlling is all big, big topics that I can promise you we do a much deeper dive in our group coaching or even in our one-on-one coaching. There's lots of resources out there, lots of stuff in Leslie's material about boundaries as well, if you're not able to join us for the group coaching just yet. So I encourage you to do that deeper dive for yourself so that you can show up as the best person that you are and know that you're worthy of having boundaries, because it'll just make you, I think, a more godly person, and it'll help teach those people how you deserve to be treated. It's such a loving thing to do.
It is clear as kind. Proverbs 16:24 says, pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And so learning, like I said, to say what you mean and mean what you say without saying it mean. That, getting very clear and being direct. You can be direct without being domineering and without being, what is the word? Controlling. Mm-hmm. You can be direct without being controlling. And the other thing I would add to the consequences piece is I believe that consequences are more of a conscious choice, that you've thought it through.
Yes.
That you've thought it through. And does the consequence meet the crime? That it's appropriate. A consequence would meet it appropriately, where a punishment could be like you're shooting from the hip. You haven't totally thought it through, and you're trying to punish someone. So anyway.
Yeah. And those external motivators might work for a hot minute, and they do sometimes, especially with children, grounding them, whatever. It does work. It does have some impact, but it's not usually sustainable. So we're talking about sustainable, consistent change over time. That's right. Is how you teach people to be treated. You don't want to manage how you want to be treated by fear mongering, by punishment, by all of those things, because it's probably not near and dear to your heart to be like that to begin with. And it doesn't last for long. It really doesn't. So anyway, I know we're at the top of the hour, lots of more stuff. And it's been such a great conversation with you, Leanne, as always. And again, I'm sorry to hear about your ear. And hopefully that gets remedied. So if anyone's here that's willing to just pray for Leanne as we get off the phone together, that would be great.
That would be great. It's the weirdest thing. So, and I think I just thank you, Jen, so much for being here today. I thank all of you for joining us on this very important topic. We've got some more lives coming up here. Jen, do you have those in front of you?
I'll see if they're in our chat here. So many questions. They're so good. No, ours was the next one, but I know we do have more coming up. I'll see if I can.
We do. I'm going to be live on Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah.
Wednesday morning, I think, with Elise, and we're going to be doing a deeper dive again with boundaries. So you won't want to miss it. Mark your calendar.
I think tomorrow night is Diana.
What's that?
Diana's tomorrow night.
Great.
How do you center yourself around God instead of your marriage or your man?
Love it.
There's another live tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
So mark your
Awesome.
calendars, ladies. Tomorrow, Coach Diane is going to be with you. And then Wednesday, Coach Elise and I will be with you. So please mark your calendars. And if you are feeling at all led, please go to leslievernick.com/group coaching. Reserve your seat. We have limited space available. We did open up some extra spots because the demand is so high. You are not alone. You are not alone, nor do you have to walk this world alone. We were never created to do relationships in isolation.
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen, so much for being here.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
Take good care, everyone. God bless. Be well. We'll see you soon.